So to Gert's point, I'm going to talk about picture frames and how I've done a couple of picture frame projects for my family. So this one is one that I did for my wife, of my daughter and myself, but I made basically two frames, both with an inlay. You get that? And we're good there. There we go. So the frame itself is made from maple. I put an inlay in. On this one, I have a spline that I put in here to just further accentuate it. I've got the tools in the back to hold the frame in. So I just want to do a quick tutorial on what I did and how I did it. Pretty straightforward process. So it starts with basically having a 45-degree cut with your piece of wood. So I just grabbed some scrap pine out of my shop today and I cut these on 45. Now I cut these on the chop saw, on the miter saw. And sometimes it's not always set properly and it's off a hair. So what I did was I purchased this device up here. It's actually called a guillotine. And I don't know if I bought it at an auction or when I bought it, but in essence, it is exactly that, a guillotine. I'm not sure you can get this wrong. So I'm going to put it on. So basically you put your wood in there, and if you want to make sure you've got a proper, can you zoom in on that, Ron? Yeah, perfect. There we go. There we go. So the wood's sitting in there. Now this angle here is directly at a 45. I know for a fact. So it'll shave off just the smallest amount of wood so that it gives me an exact 45-degree cut. That's how thin that cuts. So I now know that that's a 45-degree angle. So that's one of the tricks that I use. Not everyone is going to have this. I got lucky when I purchased it, where I found it. I'm not even really sure, but it's come in handy, and I actually used it on this project. So really knowing that your cut is at a 45 is critical, because that's really going to line up all of your angles. So it's going to line up all of your angles so that you're sitting properly from different perspectives. Now, what I did on this as a start was I used I put in a rabbet cut here, and in order to do this, I actually used a router bit to make that cut. You can do it one of two ways. The router, I find, gives you the most even cut, and it's consistent, but you can also use a stacked dado set for those that have one. I know the shop, we have one downstairs, but does everyone know how to use a stacked dado? All right. I haven't heard a lot of yeses, so I'm going to give you a quick run through. This set particularly, basically you're taking two blades, you're taking off your original blade on your table saw, and you're putting on the first blade, and then you'll put on a second blade, a cutter blade, and a third one, depending on how thick you want to be, and then you're basically going to make a sandwich out of it, and that's going to be your cutting surface, the cutting area right there, which is probably about almost a quarter to half an inch, maybe 3/8 of an inch right there. And then you're going to run your piece of material through the table saw in order to give you this rabbet cut. Does everyone understand how that works? Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. Like I say, I find that the router bit works best, and I'm sure Don McLean, you probably agree with me that the router will give you a better cut than the dado will, because it's nice and consistent. So, like I said, we have a set downstairs. This is just one that I brought in, but it comes in very handy. So you can do that cut in one of two ways.
The router gives you a better cut on the end, because you're on the end of the work.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a nice, I mean, this wood actually is not consistent, unfortunately, but I just grabbed it because it was spare in the shop. But it'll give you a nice groove in here, which is what you really want. And I find with the dado, sometimes you get a little bit of play in it, and then I have to take a shoulder plane in order to kind of give it a little more, and even this, I kind of feel there's a little bit of roughness going through it, but again, I passed it rather quickly. So when I have everything all set and I know that I'm all ready to go, I now have to glue this up. And depending on the frame, like I say, in this one, the one I used, I had a spline, but I won't do anything other than just glue these with regular white glue or the carpenter's glue that we get from Lee Valley. And then I use this clamping device, which is a really neat way to clamp all your corners. I'll do the spline afterwards. I'll glue everything up. I'll get it all squared away. So this goes into one corner. This goes here. And then I'll just snug that up.
It squares itself, does it?
Yeah. So then I just tighten that up, and then on the back here, I have the ability to just tighten that up now. And I'm just going to turn that till it's nice and snug. I want to make sure that all the pieces are flat to the surface, that everything's flat and snug, and basically that's what's going to now give me a nice square corner on all the edges. Leave that for about 24 hours to make sure it's nice and square. Now I've got my rabbet already in here, so that's already done, so I don't have to worry about that. I could put a rabbet in if I use the router. I could do it when this is done. So I could go in and I could just basically just follow the direction of the frame, and I could actually do all that. So there's two different ways in which you can do that. I've showed this jig before. So this goes up against my fence of my table saw, and then I will snug the piece up so that it's right in line there, and then I'll pass this through the table saw. And when I do that, that's what creates the spline that I have on this corner. And all I'm doing is basically just holding it. Now I won't go all the way through the wood. I'll probably go in about maybe 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch, or maybe even on this one, I think I may have even gone in 1 inch. But this is what gives me the spline. So it's a perfect jig to do that with, and it works really, really well. Any questions so far? No? All right, perfect.
Rob,
Yeah?
can I just make one comment?
Yeah.
I made quite a few frames in the past, and there's one thing that you'll learn when you're using wood like that with end green, is before you actually glue it up, you know, a day or two before, take a little bit of glue on your finger and just rub it on the edges so that it fills the pores with glue. That way when you add the glue to the wood, it will adhere to it and won't suck it in, and it'll give you a stronger joint.
Smart idea. I
Much
love
stronger.
that. You guys hear that? So just rub a little glue. I'm standing ovation. What's going on? No, it's a good tip. So basically what Wayne is saying is on the ends here, because it's end grain, rub a little glue on there before you do this. Let it dry, and then that will give you an even surface for when you're gluing up on the major piece. So
Don't let it build up. I just take
Yeah.
my finger and I rub it right into the pores, and then I smooth it off with my fingers and just leave it.
perfect. That's an awesome tip. Thanks, Wayne. I appreciate that.
Works great.
What's that?
That works.
You've tried it, yeah. So basically, once that frame is set and I've got it out of here now it's ready to go to the next step, which is then to put the glass in. And what I did for this is I just went to the dollar store and took one of their frames because they have glass, and it was just as easy. If I need to cut it, I've got a cutter that I use in order to just cut it down to size. It fit perfectly. But on the back, I think I just used some of their dollar, it's like it's not even Bristol board, it's something else. It's like a foamy type product, I don't know what it is. I've used it before. And then what I used here is this device, and what it does is it shoots the pins right into the wood, and that's what gives me the ability to then hold this down, and then I have clips, and then I have different devices in which to basically put in here, so if I want to open up on the wall. The matting, I don't do. I refuse to do it because it's way too complicated. You have to actually have straight cuts, and I don't do that very well. So I just go, I've gone to the Framing Depot in Scarborough. I don't know if there's anything in this area. Wayne, do you know any places? Michael's, yeah, so Michael's will do it. I find they're a little bit pricey though, but yeah. The coupons, yeah.
They are, and the backing paper that you put on there, if you're using like an old family portrait you don't have a copy of,
Yeah,
it should be what they call acid-free,
yes.
because it will slowly deteriorate the picture if it's back against it, just with the humidity in the air. So,
Yeah, that's a great
if it's not an
point.
old family photo, then you should think of putting that as a backing.
Who all has made frames? I'm just curious. Have you guys, any thoughts on Wayne?
Yeah, if you're not successful in making sure that it's really a square cut, just throw it through the table saw afterwards and clean up the edges so it's then square. As long as you're not taking an awful lot out, so the outside edges are different than the inside edges.
So if you're trimming up the outside of the frame, typically would you use a sled or would you use the fence?
Well, I use the sled.
Yeah,
I use the sled. That way, your frame is not moving around. It's solid. And just a chair. Pretty sure what you're.
yeah, the guillotine, yeah.
And then after I did that, I did my routering on the outside.
So you just give like a cove effect to the outside of it? Yeah, yeah. Who else had a, no?
But one of the hardest things to do when you're making picture frames is getting both sides the same width, right? Well, width or length, both.
Yeah.
Everybody else in style, but it's like hard to get them the same size.
So one of the things I do is I put a stop on my chop saw. So once I get the first one done, I'll put a stop on the end of it, and then I know exactly what that length is, and then I'll do the same thing on the other two sides, depending if I want it totally square, if I want a rectangle, but that helps me to get that, at least both sides done. And then this little fella helps to square that up as well, yeah.
So I use a table saw sled to get them exactly the same size with a stop block.
Mhm.
And then I have a miter cutter that goes into my table saw sled.
Oh, nice.
And I line it up so that the piece is right in the edge of the piece that you just cut is right in the hole with a miter cut.
Yeah.
You cut every piece exactly the same way, and you're right back to perfectly square.
Could you bring that in one day? Because there is a table saw sled that I've seen that has an insert to it. I've not done that yet, but I'd love to see that if you bring it in one day.
It's just a piece cut square.
No, perfect. Still love to see it. That's a great idea, though. Thank you. Anyone else have any comments? Yeah, Carl.
If you don't have a
Guillotine?
that shaver,
Mhm.
if you put just some tape on the fence, you have to, suppose it's out a quarter of a degree or something, a couple layers of tape, masking tape, and then with a scrap piece, you check that it's making two pieces square.
Perfect.
And then you'll do it every bit as good as that shaver does.
Yeah, did you guys hear that? So what Carl said is put some masking tape on the fence, and so that it gives you that angle or degree that you're off, and then that helps you true up the piece of wood that you're cutting. It's a great tip. Thank you, Carl. Wayne?
Another thing I do, I don't know, a lot of people like my miter saw, I don't have a nice fancy table that you can cut like 8-foot pieces or 6-foot pieces, and make a certain stop. Is what I'll do is I'll stack two pieces of wood on top of one another, and I'll cut them both as one piece.
Yeah.
And they're identical length.
Yeah,
You know,
perfect.
so like-
Do you guys hear that? You stacked two pieces on top of another, or one on top of another, to get a perfect cut. Yeah, that's awesome. I like that.
And the other thing for squaring up is to use a shooting board with a miter 45 with plane.
Yeah, you
The
can do
hand
that
plane.
too.
Oh,
So instead of this thing here, use a shooting board.
nice.
Just make sure your plane's really sharp or else it'll chip out the...
Yeah.
And it's better with a low angle plane.
That's why I like this thing. It just fluked out that I had it, but it has come in handy,
Figure you're the only guy in the club who has one of them.
It's the Wayne pie in me. I have to buy every tool. If I don't, then I'm just not feeling right. So, any other questions or comments, guys? Any other feedback?
Have you tried, you cut maple or hardwood?
Yeah, I've cut with this too.
And how-
It trims it up nicely. Yeah, it just gives you the right edge that you're looking for. Yeah,
It's just for cleaning the end, it's not for cutting through something.
yeah, yeah.
It's
It's
hard
pretty,
to adjust when you had the sharp, take the blade out and sharpen it.
I don't know. I haven't gotten to that point yet. I'll call you.
You leave it at 45, you don't ever adjust it?
No, but I'm pretty sure that it's true. I haven't had the need to adjust it yet, so. And it actually has a pin on here to make sure that it locks into place, which is fantastic. So I know that it's at a 45. Yeah.
Blade is variable.
So, and it's cast, though.
It's cast, yeah, so it's not going anywhere. Yeah.
Are you finished?
Yeah.
Because I was going to ask you about the turn on the front. No, the thing, the frame.
Oh,
Are you going to tell us, show you what the screws, this design?
The inlays?
Yeah, the inlay.
Oh, yeah, no, the inlays basically are just straight cut on the table saw, Kelvin. So before I do any of the other pieces, I'll cut in the inlay based using the dado, just to get me a nice groove straight through, and then I'll fill it in with either whatever offsetting wood I have, or something that gives it a little bit of a pop. And in this case, I had some, I don't even know what the wood is, to be quite honest. But that was the first time I really done this, and it turned out really well. For the most part, all the corners seemed to be lining up pretty good, so I was pretty fortunate on that.
Do you do one piece with inlay, or do you do each one?
Did each one.
Wow, that's-
Yeah.
Do it all one piece first. It makes it easier, then you don't have to worry about it.
That's,
Essentially.
where were you when I was doing this? I could have used that advice.
All kinds of things you could do to make the frame look different.
Oh, I know. I mean, Wayne's got a great idea with just routing, putting a groove on there on the outside. You could do that too, just to touch it up. Yeah, I just wanted something very simple and very plain, but just low enough to pop.
So
So,
also have an angle.
yeah.
Rob, can you just explain when you actually do the inlay? So you cut it with your table saw, you
Mhm.
do the groove, but the offsetting wood, the contrasting wood, how do you get that, it's that friction fit with it looking so good in there?
There is glue in there, but what I've done is, so basically, I'll measure off what the distance is on the gap on the dado, and then I'll take that same and I'll cut it a little bit strong, and so that it's bigger than what the width is of this. And if I need to, I'll just sand it down to just pass it through on the sander, just so that it fits in nice and snug, so it's not popping up, because there's no gaps in this. And so I tried to make it as snug as possible. So you're basically cutting over, but then sneaking up to it until it's actually there.
It looks like a 316.
Yeah,
And this flush, is it?
it's flush, yeah. Yeah. But then I run it through my drum sander, and so but I take light cuts. Yeah. I run it through the drum sander.
What's that?
Quarter turns.
You can go to his place and use his gun.
That's cool. Oh,
No,
Yeah,
my address is not available, sorry. Wayne,
I've done raised panel cabinet doors doing that method.
which?
45 angle, I put piston joints in the corners.
Oh, yeah.
Put it together, and it turns out flat.
Yeah.
That whole side.
Yeah, I didn't do anything other than just the spline on this and just gluing it up together. And it hasn't, I think this is probably about 3 or 4 years old, and it hasn't moved at all, so pretty happy with it. I got lucky.
Just hold it still, Rob.
Oh,
So is your inlay a veneer strip or?
no, it's a piece of wood. Yeah, so again, you can control the depth and the width of the cut for the inlay. So in this case, I did, 3/8 of an inch or whatever, or 1/4 of an inch, and then I go in maybe about 1/4 of an inch. And then that's where the inlay sits, depending on the depth. Because these actually work great for inlays, not so much on the rabbets on the back. They work great, but you can determine what you want to do for it, the depth and the cut of it too. So, no.
There's a table saw blade you can get, and it's a 1/4 inch curve, and it has a flat top.
Oh, nice.
Perfect for doing that.
Yeah. I always find that if you have the tooth that's rounded at the top or concave or convex, that's where you get the gap, and that's what drives me nuts. So finding that blade that has a flat tooth that can give you a nice flush cut, that's perfect if you can do it.
Or use a router.
Or the rotor. Yeah. Awesome. Any other questions, guys? Any other thoughts, comments, feedback? I love the conversation. You guys are doing great. No? All right.
Working with the inlay, sorry for back.
That's okay, yeah.
When you're actually cutting it, I always had real difficulty cutting hardwood and cutting that when I get down to something that's 3/8 by an inch or 3/8 by 3/4 of an inch. Forever they're flying around my shop. Like, how do you,
I use a feather board, If it's really a heavy cut or even a heavy material, like a hardwood,
Yeah.
I'll use a feather board on top, so when I'm running it through the table saw, I'll have a feather board pushing down,
Okay.
and I'll have a feather board coming from this position as well. So it's down and to the side so that it's staying flush too. Yeah. And with most table saw fences, you'll have the ability to put a feather board either directly onto the fence itself because of the grooves in the extruded aluminum, or you can actually clamp something down, which gives you that same effect. And then on my table saw, I've got the slot, so I'll use the slot from the T-square, and I'll use that to push up against the other side.
Those magnetic feather boards are really good too.
I don't have that kind of money.
I guess I do.
I saved mine for other things. I would love to see that. We should have a conversation about feather boards one day, and it's whether it's a 5 or 10 minute thing. I'll bring mine in, because there's some that I bought from woodworking shows in the past. They're shaped like a barn, like a dome. And basically they go into the T-slot, and they're great feather boards because they have that spring into them, and they're constantly putting pressure on the material as you're passing it through. And depending on where you put it on the table saw, you obviously don't want it too close to the blade, but you want it as the material's going through. And they work beautifully. Yeah.
You can make them yourselves too.
Yeah.
It's really easy to do.
I've tried that, but I can never get the curves proper on the...
I've got about 4 of them at home.
Can you bring them in next week?
Yeah.
I have a couple of cedar.
Can you bring yours in next week too? And I'll bring in mine. And if anyone has a feather board, bring it on in next week. Let's just compare notes. It's not the most fascinating topic, but it's a good one. Done.
I got a jig
A jig for
cutting.
feather boards? Oh, could you bring that in as well? Sorry, we were just getting carried away. It's an awesome conversation, though. I appreciate that.
That's the kind of thing that needs.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other questions, comments? No? Awesome. Thank you. You guys have been great. I appreciate that.